Hey everybody, welcome to the Brand Sisters. I'm Claire.
I'm Alexis.
And today we're going to talk about what to do if you're not ready to hire a designer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so a lot of people, as they're starting out their business, they may or may not feel like they're ready to invest in somebody, right? And we deal with, all kinds of clients, but usually people that come to us, they're ready to make that investment to take that next step, right? That next leap. But for a lot of businesses, and I remember for myself, and I'm sure you do too, like there are different seasons in your business. And sometimes we, are a little bit more in that DIY phase. And so we have to figure out how to make our business work with what we have, right?
Okay, let me ask you a question. When you're talking about hiring a designer, are you talking about for like somebody that would come for like a logo or that kind of a thing?
Yeah. I think it would be, I guess maybe you could like a brander, like someone who does branding, because that would kind of encompass everything, right? Like your logo, color, like everything. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a few different phases. The first step would be something that actually you would be focusing on more so with our clients is developing a business summary, right? And we go more in depth with that, right? We talk about taglines and, core values and all that kind of stuff that shapes everything. But in order for you to have direction, I always kind of think about it like in English class, how you have to have an outline, right? To write an essay. Like you can't just show up to your blank page and write an amazing essay. You need something to work off of. So it's so important as a business to know who you are, right? Because then everything just kind of flows from there. So to make sure that you have a, 1 to 2 line summary of what you do so that you have clarity and then everything else can kind of flow naturally. So that's the first step. The second step would be, and one comment I wanted to make about the business summary is to be as specific as you possibly can. So we've talked a lot about like, if we worked with a realtor, for example, saying that you're like a Bay Area realtor is really vague, right? That does not speak to who you are and then what you can offer that's unique to clients. So you need to have something in your business summary that sets you apart.
Right. I mean, that's something that we work with clients a lot, and you're exactly right, is that's not memorable, right? There's thousands of those, right? So what is it that you offer that's unique that helps you stand apart from your competition, which sometimes, is challenging to distinguish yourself in that way, but it's really imperative if you're going to create a memorable brand.
Absolutely. Second thing is to choose a color palette and a font family. Or a font. So a color palette is really important because it gives you aesthetic direction. If you come to an Instagram profile or a website or whatever, and they have a lot of colors going on, or there's really no distinct color palette, then it leaves, again, like this feeling of unmemorability. Is that a word? I don't know. Not being memorable.
I don't know what
the equivalent.
It works.
You get
it works.
it. Yeah. You want to make sure that you are making an impact, and that when somebody sees your brand, they resonate with who you are, and who you are obviously comes across in so many different ways, whether that's copy or colors and all that. So making sure that you're establishing a color palette. We have a podcast episode and a blog post that talks specifically to the science that goes behind that and how exactly to pick a color palette. So you guys can go ahead and make your way over there if you want to dive into that more. But in general, the way to do is to pick about 3 to 5 colors. And you want to make sure that you have 2 of those colors that are good for like background, right? A lighter color, a darker color, and then maybe an accent color. And then you can kind of just stick with that. And obviously Pinterest is an amazing resource for stuff like that. And then the other part of it is a font. So a lot of people think that they can just choose whatever font they want or whatever font's available. But then usually what happens is they get bored with that font and they want to try a different one, right? And then it just turns into this like, it just falls apart, right? That visual aesthetic just kind of falls apart. So it's really important to choose 1 to 2 fonts at most, I think, when you're doing it on your own to make sure that things look clean. And what I usually recommend for people who are doing it on your own is to choose a font family that has variety to it. And you can go to a couple websites like Creative Market or Design Cuts. Those are both websites where you can purchase a font, and it's so great to have a font that's not one that you're going to see all over the place, right? Canva is an incredible resource, and we often, recommend that clients use that if they want to do stuff on their own. But the only problem with Canva is that it only goes so far. They only have so many fonts, and then you end up seeing everybody using those, right? Because
Right.
most people are trying to DIY that kind of stuff. And so then it just ends up being like white noise.
Well, and it's like the opposite of what you're talking about, which is trying to create something that's memorable.
Right.
And if you're doing the same thing that everybody else is, that's not
Mhm.
distinguishable.
Exactly. So going that one step further to purchase another font from a couple, Creative Market Design Cuts, just to kind of set yourself apart is awesome. And usually having like a very legible, readable font, and then having a font that maybe is a little bit more artistic is key. Um, the next thing, which is actually your domain, which is choosing 5 flagship photos. So having, about 5 photos that you feel like perfectly encompass your brand, and then just kind of recycling those and reusing those for a period of time. I think it's good, like every, couple months, every month, every few months, whatever, changing it up, right? Maybe not changing it up, but getting new ones,
right,
so that you're not like reusing the same ones over again. But hiring a photographer, right, might not be where you're at. But having that be part of your aesthetic is so crucial. And obviously you could talk about that way more than I could, but it's so important to make sure that you have something other than just graphics, right? Like you need something that makes a connection. And if you don't have, I think that you would say, especially you're very passionate about talking about having photos that you're in, right?
Right.
So that you can like make a connection. But I would refrain from using like iPhone photos and, like photos that aren't super professional and could be grainy, like on your website and stuff. Maybe on social media.
Right.
I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think it's perfectly fine to use iPhone photos on social media when it's the smaller quality. But I mean, yes, just like what you're saying,
Yeah.
like blowing those up or having them in banner photos usually don't look great,
Yeah.
which isn't going to, mirror the image that you're going for. But I think for like social media, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah. So having, and there's a couple websites that I even use sometimes for clients, and I recommend that they use their Pexels, Pexels, and then Unsplash. There's a couple other ones, but those two I feel like are pretty, great go-to ones. And I remember reading an article a while ago that said that if it's not a photo that you're in, and it's, not, if it's, well, I'll say it this way first. Try and refrain from getting photos that have like close-ups of people's faces. And so, and the reason they said that is because people are naturally drawn to other people, right? And so if you have a graphic, for example, where you're trying to, promote a sale that you have coming up, and you have somebody's photo on there and they're looking at the camera, our initial reaction is going to be drawn to that face, not the promotion, right? So it's really important to make sure that you have photos that are not competing with your content, right? So
that's a really great point, and it's actually one of my pet peeves. When I'm on people's websites, like for their business, their brand, and obviously this doesn't apply to all things, but for example, there was someone in finance that I was working with, and their website had tons of images of different like photos of people, but like stock photos, right? Like nobody, and I felt like it was incredibly distracting to their messaging. I mean, I could not, and there were so many different people and different types, but it was really distracting to like what they were actually promoting. It was a well done website. I mean, it wasn't, but that's interesting. You're totally right. That it can distract, even though you're trying to create a human connection.
Right.
But and it doesn't mean it has to be all photos of you. That's not
Right.
what you're saying. But that's a great point.
Yeah, and obviously, if you're doing like skincare or something like that, then like that's
Right.
totally different.
Right.
But if you're not, and you're trying to, you have to think about what's the message here. Like, what am I trying to get across? That needs to get the attention, not the actual, photo itself. That has to be more of like a background to set the ambiance, set the mood or whatever. And then the fourth tip is to curate some templates. So especially for social media, because that is such an important part of anyone's business these days. It's the ideal way to create a connection. You have to make sure that you are producing content that's interesting, right? And that's attention grabbing. And I think again, the like pro and con of Canva is that it is so accessible, but then it's so accessible, right? Like everybody's using it. And so my recommendation is always like, if you're going to choose to do it on your own, choose like 3 to 5 templates that you can find easily on Canva, and then just like take an hour out of your week and just modify them a tiny bit, so that they're not the exact same template that everyone else is using. And I can like at this point, especially, like, you can tell, like, this is a Canva template. I've seen this like 5 other times today already,
Right.
So just choosing a few templates, or even just one template, and then duplicating it, right? And then just change a couple details here and there, change your color palette, and then make sure it just has a little bit of a unique vibe.
So what are some of the details that you can change other than color palette and font?
I always try and, obviously, if people have like access to like Photoshop or something like that, it's always nice to, or an iPad, like it's always nice to have some design elements that are done by you, because then it is original, That's granted if you have any sort of artistic ability, which I think a lot of people do actually. So even just having a like a watercolor swatch, or like a squiggly line or an arrow that like you drew, stuff like that. Um, or just your customized font that you bought, like those kinds of things just take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Um, and then the last thing is be simple and just do it. I think so many people get caught up in all the details and all the things because there are so many things that you can incorporate in your business. But I think once you get started, especially and it's your business, you get so excited and you want to incorporate everything. And then it just, at some point, you either get burnt out or it just looks messy. And then that comes off as being unprofessional, and then you miss out on that connection with your ideal audience. So I always recommend like being simple. Being simple, choose one template, choose, 2 photos, whatever it might be, and just use that and be consistent. And then you can change it up.
Yeah.
But I think when we feel like we have to do it all, we don't do it.
Right.
So making sure that we choose that simplicity, and then you get in a groove and you figure things out and things go more quickly and you streamline stuff. So I think that when you're doing it yourself, sourcing out the help as much as you can. Like if you have friends that know what they're doing, trying to do that. We have a lot of at least when they come, by the time they come to me, our clients, a lot of clients have had that experience. Like, oh, I asked my friend who's kind of a designer, and so trying to do the best you can to use the free resources you have before, at some point, hopefully you can make that jump to hire a free designer or hire a designer, hire a free designer. We don't offer those services, but so yeah, those are kind of like the first 5 steps for anyone who's not quite ready to take the plunge and hire a designer. But if you do feel like you've done these things, that you have experience with that, and you're ready to take that step, know that we're always here at Animala Agency to help you take that next step, get to the next level with your business.
Nice.
And you can find more details about this on our website, animala.com. You can visit us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, wherever. And we're excited to see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.